Bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Welcome to the show, everybody. NBA basketball is back. This show is powered by CLNS Media and, of course, LakersNation.com. Today's show is brought to you by Greats. Go to Greats.com. Use the promo code LakersNation for 15% off a phenomenal pair of shoes. Guys, as always, my name is Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. Got an awesome show for you today. Alex Kennedy of Hoops Hype, good friend of the show, is here. He's going to talk about the Lakers. We're going to talk about the NBA in general, make some predictions, talk some trades, all kinds of things. So let's jump right into it. Of course, follow him on Twitter at Alex Kennedy&nbsp. Alex, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So the NBA season is starting up this week. Here we are, finally. I mean, I guess it was kind of a fast offseason because there were so many moves, so many big stars jumping from one team to another. It was crazy. So given how eventful the summer was, what are you expecting from this season?
I'm really excited. I give a lot of the executives credit because I think, they could have went out and said, okay, well, the Warriors have a star-studded team. They're going to be better because not only did they bring everyone back and add Nick Young, Omri Caspi, they're going to have better chemistry. They're going to have, another year of experience under their belts. Kevin Durant's going to have a year of experience with Steve Kerr. So really teams could have said, oh, the Warriors are obviously going to win it all. Let's just kind of build for the future or rebuild a little bit. But no, that's not really what happened. Boston goes out and adds Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, and they were very active. Cleveland made some moves, bringing in Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, and I think if you look in the Western Conference, especially, there was just so much movement. Houston goes out and acquires Chris Paul, PJ Tucker. I love what the Thunder did, bringing in Paul George and Carmelo Anthony, and the reason I love it is because they didn't really give up a whole lot. The fact that they didn't give up a first-round pick in either of those trades and really got to dump some bad contracts to get those guys was really impressive to me. You had Minnesota go get Jimmy Butler. There was a lot of movement, and typically you don't see that. I think this is one of the most active off seasons that I've seen in quite some time, and that was a bit of a surprise for me, just because I think most people feel like Golden State winning it all is inevitable. But I give a lot of these teams credit for putting themselves in position. So if Golden State does have an injury or they do regress for whatever reason, there's 5 or 6 teams that have a legitimate shot and have some really talented rosters that are going to be exciting to watch come together.
Let's talk about this OKC thing for a minute, because I've been watching this situation and just shaking my head. I know a lot of Lakers fans are as well. Somehow the Oklahoma City Thunder have rebounded from some terrible mistakes. I mean, trading James Harden and not getting hardly anything in return for him and letting him slip through their fingers needlessly, really. They still managed to field a contending team. They lose Kevin Durant, and then suddenly Paul George and Carmelo Anthony fall into their laps. They give up hardly anything for either one of them. I mean, Victor Oladipo is an okay player, and Sabonis has some merit and everything, but in general, they, like you said, they didn't even have to give up a first-round pick, and they somehow landed these really talented players. Lakers fans are keeping an eye on this situation because, of course, the Lakers want to sign Paul George next summer. What did this do to the chances of the Lakers landing Paul George, in your opinion?
Well, I think it really depends on what happens this season. I was very surprised, like you said, that they were able to get both of those guys without giving up a whole lot. You mentioned Oladipo, Sabonis, Cantor. Those aren't really attractive assets. Those aren't, huge pieces that they had to part with. And then they were able to land, 2 star players to put alongside Russell Westbrook. And I think, just the fact that Russell Westbrook signed his extension when he really, wasn't giving an indication one way or the other that he was going to do that. The fact that they got him to put pen to paper, that alone makes the moves worth it, in my opinion, because they were able to keep Westbrook and lock him up. So even if both of those guys leave, it ensured that they keep Westbrook long term And it's possible that those guys stay. They have said that if this team is able to come together and mesh well and coexist, and then maybe go on a deep run in the playoffs, these guys may be looking to stay. It's very possible. I do still think Paul George is going to have his eyes on the Lakers. I think Carmelo Anthony is going to be looking elsewhere as well. These guys are going to do their due diligence. And really, I think it comes down to a few factors. Does Oklahoma City play well together? And there's no guarantee they will. All of these guys have needed the ball in their hands to be successful throughout their career. Russell Westbrook obviously is someone that is known for pounding the ball and putting up a lot of shots. Carmelo Anthony's the same way. He needs the ball in isolation situations. And then Paul George, he's used to being number one option as well. He's more of a two-way player. He can kind of make an impact when the ball is not in his hands, but I think he wants to be that star. And he's entering his prime, whereas Carmelo's kind of in the twilight of his career. So it's going to be interesting to see how these pieces come together. I think OKC's season and their results are going to determine a lot here. But I think also the Lakers, how they play and how their young guys look is really going to impact things as well. If you're the Lakers, you want Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram and Julius Randle and, all these young guys to have a monster season so that if, you are Paul George or LeBron James, and you're kind of looking at this team from a distance, you see the pieces and you see the plan that's kind of unfolding where you could join them, put them over the top. It kind of reminds me of when LeBron went back to Cleveland from Miami. He was watching that team and saw, okay, Kyrie Irving is a special player. They have young pieces with Andrew Wiggins and, Dion Waiters and Tristan Thompson. I think he understood that they had the option to trade for Kevin Love before he went back and made that move. So I think a lot of players that are going to be free agents this next summer are going to be looking at the Lakers throughout this year. And certainly we all know the Lakers are on national TV a ton. So they're going to get tons of chances to watch these guys play. You want to see Lonzo and Ingram and all the young guys in Los Angeles really look good. I think that's really what the Lakers should be focused on this year, developing those guys, trying to win more games. Obviously, you don't want to be the second worst team in the Western Conference when you're trying to pitch, free agents. And you want to show that, their style of basketball can win games, but also be exciting and fun. That's going to be what's going to attract, the Paul Georges and LeBron Jameses of the world.
Yeah, a lot of what the Lakers are trying to do, especially next summer, is going to come down to how well their young core develops, which is what you were just saying. So let's talk about that. What do you think about this Lakers young core? Do they have the right pieces? I know the other night on TV, I think it was before the Houston Rockets and San Antonio Spurs game, or maybe it was between games before the Lakers game came on. We had Kevin McHale was on NBA on TNT, and he was saying, he wasn't too sure about this Lakers young core. He doesn't think they really have the right pieces in place. Doesn't think they have anybody that's really going to pop and become a true star. What's your take on these guys?
I disagree. I think they have a really nice young core. I'll start with Lonzo Ball. I think that you look at Lonzo, and he's someone that is going to make the players around him better, and other players, other star players especially, want to play with pass-first guys. That's just something that we've seen over the years in the NBA. If there's a guy that's going to put you in position to get easy buckets and make your life easier and be unselfish, other stars want to play with that kind of player. We've already heard Jordan Clarkson and some of these guys on the Lakers praise Lonzo Ball for that. I think it was during the first preseason game. Lonzo went over to Jordan Clarkson and said, Clarkson was hot. He was scoring the ball really well. And Lonzo said, I'm going to keep passing you the ball until you tell me not to. And Jordan was like, man, I love hearing that. Every NBA player wants that kind of point guard that's going to set them up and run the offense well. So I think if you are a star player and you are considered, let's say you're Paul George and you play a season alongside Russell Westbrook where Russ is taking 20 shots and maybe he's not the most efficient player, he needs the ball in his hands. Suddenly playing with a guy like Lonzo, who doesn't really care about scoring the ball, who is more of a traditional point guard, who wants to pass the ball, that's very attractive. And I think a lot of star players look at Lonzo that way. It kind of reminds me of, a guy like Rondo or Kidd, where, if you're a player that's playing alongside him, you're going to get the ball, and there's going to be at least a few shots per game that are just easy buckets because of his court vision and his unselfishness. And I look at the other pieces around them, and I think they've done a pretty good job. Some of these guys may be traded. Again, it kind of comes back to, like what Cleveland did with the Kevin Love trade. Not all of these guys are going to be on the team necessarily, but I think they have potential to be very good or potential to be very interesting trade chips. I like Julius Randle. I think his body transformation this summer has been very interesting. Jordan Clarkson still has potential. I like the pickup of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I think obviously he's on a 1-year deal, but I'm curious to see what he can do with this team and, see if he's a long-term answer there because I think he's very underrated as a two-way player. And then, Larry Nance is one of my favorite players in the NBA. I've made that very clear since he entered the league. I love his hustle. I love his unselfishness. He's just so self-aware and humble and knows his role. And I think every team needs a guy like that. And then Kyle Kuzma is apparently the best player on earth based on the preseason. He's an MVP. Yeah, he's MVP front runner, so you gotta love that. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, he's been a steal. So you look at those guys, and we haven't even touched on Brandon Ingram yet, who I still believe in. People have kind of been down on Ingram a bit, but you have to remember this is a guy that was drafted because of his potential. Everyone's looking at guys like Kuzma and Larry Nance Jr. and what those guys have been able to do. But those guys had way more experience in college. They're a bit older. Brandon Ingram was drafted because of his potential, not what he's going to be on day one. So you obviously want to see Ingram have a strong season and take a next step forward and show some flashes and really, wow some people. But I'm not ready to write him off just yet. I think, he's going to take some time to develop. But I do like this young core. I think there's a lot of pieces to like. And I certainly think there's going to be a number of stars watching this team from afar this year.
Yeah, that's going to be – it's kind of strange because the focus for this team is already sort of on next summer. At least the fan base is already looking ahead to next summer, even though I think there's plenty of reason to be excited for this NBA season, even though they aren't projected to be a playoff team or anything like that. I think this Lakers team has some good players, has some players that we're going to enjoy watching, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So even if, they may not be able to make a leap until next summer when they can potentially land some free agents, still, there's a lot of reason to watch these guys and follow them. I mean, you went through all of those players, and you got me fired up just listening to hearing you talk about each one of these guys. And you notice we didn't even mention Brook Lopez yet, and he
right.
just might be the best player on the team, right?
I think he actually is the best player on the team. He's a bit older, obviously, but he's so talented. And you talk to guys that played with him on the Nets, and they just rave about him as a player, as a leader, as a person. Everyone loved him. I had Trevor Booker on our podcast earlier this summer, and he was just heartbroken that Brook is off the team now because really he was so important to that squad. I think he's someone that even if the team is losing and going through a rough patch, he makes sure that everyone in the locker room is staying positive and staying optimistic and working hard and fighting in every single game. And that's the kind of guy that you want. That's the kind of veteran leader you want. And he is probably the most talented player on this team just because he's in his prime, whereas a lot of these guys are younger. And I think, with his game, it's really interesting. He's someone that can score the ball so well in the post. Injuries have kind of been the story of his career, and they've limited him a bit. But he's been healthy in recent years, and if he can stay healthy this year, I think not only are we going to see him be able to score the ball in the post and make things easier for guys like Lonzo and Brandon Ingram, because he is a legitimate number one option in the post, he's also shown that he can shoot the ball and really stretches game out to almost the 3-point line, maybe even the 3-point line. I think he's shooting over 40% from three in the preseason. So if he can keep that up, then he has a ton of value at the trade deadline. If you did want to flip him for someone, maybe some more young pieces, or if you see him as a long-term piece for this team, he becomes very attractive as well. So I like this Lakers team. I agree with you. I think there's still a lot to be excited about this year. I understand Laker fans looking toward the future because LA fans typically are used to contending and, being a top seed. So the thought of kind of watching a rebuilding year, even an exciting one, I'm sure they're kind of like upset about that. But these kind of years are important whenever you are developing young players and whenever you're trying to attract free agents, because, you have to show growth. You have to show that the pieces are there. every star free agent wants to see, okay, if I go to this team, we're going to be a contender. They want to be that missing piece. I keep going back to the Cleveland example, but LeBron went to Cleveland and said, okay, they're one piece away. I can go there and make them a finals team. The same can be said for Chris Paul with Houston. He said, okay, they're one piece away. I can go there and all of a sudden maybe we compete with Golden State. It's really rare to see a star player just go join a team that's very far away from contention. So that's where, these guys need to play well this year, especially the young guys, to show that there's a wide championship window and attract some of these stars that want to be able to step right in and immediately contend.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be important that the Lakers are able to show well this season, that they're able to prove that they are worthy of a superstar coming to them, that they can make a leap if they can add that next piece next summer. And as we were talking about Brook Lopez, he actually led the league in threes from the center position last year. So he is definitely a floor spacer, which nobody saw coming. He just kind of started doing that last season. And so I think that's going to be a big benefit for the Lakers. Alex, let's get to trades in just a second here. First, I got to stop and we got to talk about Greats. Okay, Greats is a Brooklyn-based sneaker company. They sell amazing classic style shoes made by the best, and they cost less. I've got a pair myself. They are phenomenal. I get compliments on them every time I wear them. I really, really love them. They're incredibly versatile. You can wear them just about any occasion. Tons of different colors and materials to choose from. And the best thing is they have now partnered with us. So if you go to greats.com, that's greats.com, and when you check out, you enter the promo code LakersNation, you get 15% off. So you get an amazing pair of shoes at an excellent price by going to greats.com, enter that promo code LakersNation. I believe in these shoes. I love them. Greats believes in them so much that they offer a no-risk return and exchange policy. So it guarantees that you get the right fit in the right style that you're going to love. Again, go to greats.com, use the promo code LakersNation when you check out, get 15% off. All right, Alex. Now this Lakers team, as we've been talking about, they are geared for next summer. We know that it's going to be about showing strong this season and proving to free agents that they are ready to make that next step. But as you mentioned, that might mean that some of the guys that are on the team right now don't wind up being part of the long-term future, especially if they want to free up cap space, which we know they do. So, Alex, in your opinion, who is it that is going to be on the trading block this year that Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka will be looking to deal?
Well, there are a few guys. Obviously, Luol Deng's name is going to come up. If they can package him with a draft pick or a young player to free up cap space, that's something they're going to look at because, they want to have as much cap space as possible to go out and make big moves in free agency. So Deng, we've heard his name a lot over the last year. You're going to keep hearing his name as a possible trade. As a possible trade package, really. You're not going to be able to move his contract without attaching something to it, but his name will keep coming up. Jordan Clarkson, I think, is a bit more expendable than he was whenever he signed, that new contract. I think he does have value, and there's teams around the NBA that are interested in him. I think he could be someone that is shopped or not even shopped necessarily, but maybe the Lakers listen to calls for him. And then I think also with kind of how things have, shaken up in the front court with Kyle Kuzma playing well, Larry Nance Jr. playing really well, Julius Randle still, being in the mix and showing potential. You have a number of guys there that are a bit redundant. And anytime that's the case, those guys are more expendable. So if there's a deal out there for Julius, Larry, or Kyle that would fill another need or allow them to, bring in a nice asset, maybe they do consider trading one of those guys. I think all those players are talented, and I really like all those guys. So it would be tough to see the Lakers part with them. But I think that's just the nature of, whenever you have a logjam like that, you have to look at those kind of moves and see what's out there. And then I think some of the veterans on the team are going to be mentioned. kind of like last year, whenever the team was struggling a little bit, when it became clear that they weren't going to be a playoff team, we saw Lou Williams and Nick Young. Those guys really were mentioned a lot in trade rumors, and Lou got traded, obviously. The same could happen this year. Corey Brewer could be mentioned as a possible trade candidate. Brooke Lopez, Andrew Bogut. I don't think Brooke Lopez gets traded because he does have that big contract. And again, he could be a guy that the Lakers see as part of their long-term future if they want to re-sign him. But if there's an indication he's not going to re-sign, maybe they shop him. But I think Brewer and Bogut especially are two guys to keep an eye on. Every time teams are approaching the playoffs, they're looking for defenders. Andrew Bogut was obviously someone that was highly coveted last year because he's an interior defender, and every contender seemed like looked at him at one point or the other. So I think Bogut could, be someone that is attractive to teams. He's only getting paid $2.3 million. So if the Lakers can flip him for a draft pick or a young player, I could see them doing that. Corey Brewer is making $7.5 million. He's a guy that is proven. He's a veteran, good defender. I could see a team trading for him to improve their depth. Those are the kind of guys that, I usually keep an eye on as I kind of look at a roster, especially a young team like the Lakers. If they're not going to be a playoff team, if they're, winning, around 30, 35 games, something like that, then other teams are going to be circling this roster and looking at those veteran players and seeing who could be available. So, we mentioned the young guys like Clarkson and Randall and Nance. Those guys are obviously going to, draw a lot of interest. I think Magic Johnson called Larry Nance Jr. their X factor, their secret weapon, and said that
weapon, yep.
Yeah, and he said tons of teams are calling about him. So there's obviously interest there, but I don't think Magic is interested in trading him. But I think the guys like Brewer and Bogut, those guys are more obtainable, and especially as the trade deadline gets closer, depending on the Lakers' record and kind of where things stand. And then also I think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope could be interesting. I think they want to re-sign him. I think they look at him as a potential long-term piece, but if it becomes clear that this was a one-year deal and next summer he's going to go try to get a payday from another team, and it doesn't seem very likely he's going to stay, maybe he's someone they explore trading as well.
Yeah, it seems like they've got a lot of options, and I think this is going to be a really interesting season for the Lakers in regards to trade rumors. I mean, it always is because that's just the way things are with the Lakers. But this season in particular, I mean, Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka have already shown that they are not afraid to pull the trigger on deals. They've been wheeling and dealing since they came on board. I mean, Magic Johnson, within a few days of taking over, he already had traded Lou Williams, so we know that they're willing to make moves. And it seems like there are a lot of pieces here that could be traded. Now, you mentioned Kyle Kuzma. Based on the way things are right now, I think Lakers fans would riot if the Lakers traded Kyle Kuzma. But he's a piece that maybe does make some of these other guys expendable, including Julius Randle, who has a expiring contract. His deal runs out at the end of this year. He can be a restricted free agent next summer, but it's yet to be seen if he is a guy in the Lakers' long-term plans. The fact that his contract does run out, though, could actually hamper his value a little bit, could make him a little bit less valuable to other teams, but we'll see. The Lakers have a lot of options here. Now, one name that was considered off limits over the summer was Brandon Ingram. And we've been seeing a lot, at least I've been noticing this quite a bit online. Fans have been getting kind of upset with Ingram, with his performance in preseason. He hasn't been shooting the ball particularly well. He finished things off with a pretty nice performance against the Clippers, but overall, people have been a little bit underwhelmed by Brandon Ingram, and there's been some questions thrown out about whether or not he should truly be untouchable. Alex, in your opinion, was that the right move to make him untouchable, and should he continue to have that status throughout the season because he's going to get better, or should the Lakers maybe listen to some offers for him?
I'm not a big fan of making anyone untouchable. I think you should always listen to offers if teams are calling, but I don't think they should overreact and trade him just to trade him or, start actively shopping him. Again, I think Brandon Ingram, it's important to remember that this guy just turned 20 years old last month. You look at Kuzma, he's 22 years old. Larry Nance Jr. is 24 years old. Guys like, the other young guys in this team are a bit older. Ingram was drafted because of his potential. He, when they drafted him, they knew he was a skinny kid that, showed glimpses of what he could do, but they knew it was going to take time to get him, to bulk up, to get him, playing at that high level that we know he's capable of. Right now he's still very raw, but I think when he was drafted, he was kind of looked at as a project. So I'm not surprised that, he struggled a bit during the preseason. I really don't think they should overreact and start talking about trading him. I think you have to be patient with a guy like that. And that's tough to do, but that's where the Lakers, they're in a good position to be patient with the guy. It's not like they're trying to compete for a championship this year and need Brandon Ingram to step up and lead them. They have time to give this guy a ton of reps, a ton of shots, a ton of minutes, and let him grow. The best way for a young project like that to get better is to play a lot and gain experience. And I think putting guys like Lonzo Ball and Caldwell Pope alongside him and Brook Lopez as well, that's only going to help him. So I'm not ready to overreact and say Brandon Ingram, should be traded or anything like that. I'm not a big fan of the untouchable label. Like I said, I think every player could be traded if the right deal presents itself. I've had GMs tell me, oh yeah, that guy's untouchable. And then literally, a week and a half later, they traded the guy. And it's because they didn't see that offer coming. And, I've confronted a GM about that. And they said, yeah, well, we thought he was untouchable, but then this team called and made this offer. And we had no idea that he had that much value. So we had to do it. So even when GMs or, owners throw out the word untouchable, usually it's relative, it's relatively speaking. It's what they think they could get. If tomorrow the Lakers got a call and Kevin Durant was available, then obviously no one's untouchable on their team. Obviously that's an extreme example, but you see what I'm saying. So I think the untouchable word gets thrown around a little bit too much, but I'm not worried about Ingram. I would hold on to him. I think just with his game and his style of play and his body and his potential, he is still very unique. There's a reason he went so high in the draft. There's a reason that other teams are calling about him. If he was this bust that no one wanted, other teams wouldn't be calling and making significant offers for him. So I would hold on to him and see what he can become. A few years from now, if he's still struggling, then yeah, we're going to talk about this being a mistake, and you're going to look at some of the different trades they could have had or could have made involving Ingram, kind of like the J.J. Hickson Cleveland scenario where everyone kind of goes back and, they talked about J.J. Hickson being untouchable and,
right,
them not wanting to trade him. And you kind of look back at who they could have had. But I don't see this playing out that way. I think Ingram will eventually develop into a very talented player. And I think it's unfair to compare him to some of these other rookies or second-year players that are much older and NBA ready, because that's not who he was when they drafted him. That's not who they expected to get. So I would just keep being patient and then, let him develop, give him time.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, all indications that we've had from the Lakers themselves are that they're extremely pleased with Ingram and that they understand there's going to be growing pains and all that. Still, I mean, you can understand where fans start to get a little bit nervous when the former number 2 overall pick isn't performing all that well and had kind of a rough rookie season that was up and down. Everybody's kind of just keeping their fingers crossed and hoping that we see some more flashes of potential, which I think we will. I think that long term he's going to be just fine, but you got to remember that he is just a kid. Now, there's a lot going on in the NBA right now. There's so many different things happening. I'm excited about this season, and not just because of the Lakers, but just because of everything that's going on around the league. You've got all this drama everywhere. You've got Kyrie versus LeBron and Isaiah Thomas being upset with Cleveland. You've got Joel Embiid and Hassan Whiteside having a Twitter war. I mean, there's so many different things happening here. It's almost impossible to do, but let's try to make some predictions about what's going to happen this season. So I guess let's start with, I don't know, in most seasons I would say this is kind of the easy one, but this year I think it's really difficult. Let's talk about the MVP. Who do you see taking home the MVP award this year and why? I'm struggling with this, so I'm curious to get your response here.
I'm going to go with LeBron James. I think LeBron's going to put up monster numbers, and I think when you look at all the other candidates that are typically mentioned, I think they're going to split votes with each other. You look at Golden State. We saw this happen last year where Steph Curry and Kevin Durant split votes. I think you look at Russell Westbrook. He's going to try to become the two-time MVP, but now he's going to split votes with Paul George and Carmelo Anthony. Voters typically will take will kind of hold it against the guy if he has star players around him, and Paul George is a superstar player in his own right. So I think we're going to see Westbrook's numbers come down, and we're going to see, he's not going to receive as much credit for what Oklahoma City does because he has 2 stars next to him. Houston, James Harden obviously was the runner-up this year. Now you add Chris Paul there. He's someone that is sometimes mentioned in the MVP discussion. So, he's not going to get all the credit for what Houston does if they're very good. So really the way I look at it as, and in Boston, if they're the number 1 seed, you have Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward. So, I don't think either of those guys win it. So really the 2 guys that I kind of look at are LeBron James. And it's possible that he could split votes with Isaiah Thomas, but obviously Thomas is entering the year injured. And I think it's going to be pretty clear that LeBron is the go-to guy there. He's the man. And I think everyone kind of knows Isaiah is going to be the number 2 guy that's kind of supporting him versus, his equal. Like you could maybe make the case about Durant and Curry or Paul and Harden. So I think LeBron is really my front runner right now. If the Spurs are able to have a really strong year, maybe Kawhi Leonard wins it because he doesn't have as much help as some of the other guys. Those are the 2 guys that I'm kind of looking at right now. Maybe a guy like John Wall surprises people. Maybe a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo surprises people if Washington or Milwaukee exceed all expectations and those guys put up big numbers like we know they're capable of. John Wall was fantastic last year. He didn't get enough credit because of what Russell Westbrook and James Harden and these other guys did. If Washington, makes a big jump and they're the, 3rd seed or even the 2nd seed, let's say, maybe John Wall gets some love. If Giannis puts up the numbers that we know he's capable of, he's been knocking down some threes in the preseason, which is terrifying. Maybe he gets some love as well, but for right now, I'll say LeBron James. I think that he's going to have to carry this Cavaliers team, and I think honestly, this Cavs team is a really interesting fit around him. I think that putting Kevin Love at center is going to give him his first stretch 5 that he's played with since Chris Bosh. I think Jay Crowder is going to be huge for him. It allows him to not always have to guard the best player on the other team. And it gives him, a versatile defender next to him. And he's going to be able to move back to the 3 where, he's able to post guys up and get more rebounds. And I think he's more comfortable there. And then Isaiah Thomas, I think he's a really good catch and shoot player. I think Dwayne Wade is going to be huge for him. Obviously, Wade struggles shooting the ball a little bit, but they have so much chemistry. And Wade, you look at the numbers, whenever they're playing together in the same team, Wade is just so much more productive on the defensive end. He cuts so much better. LeBron knows him so well that he finds him for easy baskets. So I think right now I would say LeBron is my favorite. Again, I think just like with John Wall, LeBron didn't get enough credit for what he did last year. Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double, so everyone talked about that. James Harden was phenomenal. But if you look at LeBron last year, you can make the case that he had his best season of his NBA career. He averaged 26.4 points, 8.6 rebounds, 8.7 assists, and 1.2 steals. And then the best part, he was so efficient. He shot 55% from the field and 37% from 3. I mean, that's just extremely efficient. He led the league in minutes per game, despite being, someone that's played so much and has so much wear and tear on his body. I think he'll be asked to do even more this year with Kyrie Irving gone. So I like the moves that they made, the way that they've kind of tinkered the lineup, and I think he's probably my front runner at this point, just because other guys are going to split votes.
Yeah, see, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the issue that I was having looking around. I mean, my vote would have gone to James Harden if he didn't have Chris Paul, and then the same thing with Westbrook. But he's added these pieces, and voters tend to not go with guys who have superstar teammates, and so that's what makes things tough. And there is still that voter fatigue with LeBron because he's won the MVP award so many times already. I think you make a great argument for him. When answering this question, I went with James Harden, but I don't feel good about that. I just kind of figured he would be on his revenge tour here. But we'll see. It's going to be a really interesting MVP race this year because something's got to give. You either have to toss a vote towards someone who has superstar teammates, or you got to vote for someone who people have voted for a lot historically in LeBron. So it's going to be
or we're going to see voters completely go a different way and vote for someone that's not one of the top seeds, because that's typically been the case.
Right.
You have to be a 1, 2, 3 seed, it seems like, to win it. Russell Westbrook was kind of the exception last year just because he averaged a triple double, so we almost had to give it to him. But typically you have to be one of those top seeds in order to win it, and I think that's why the list is kind of limited as well. That's why we're talking about maybe LeBron, Harden, or Kawhi. Like I said, a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo puts up the numbers. Last year he averaged 23 points, 9 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 2 blocks, and 1.6 steals. That's just ridiculous. And if he can, improve on those numbers even a little bit, and if he does start knocking down threes like we've seen a little bit during the preseason, the numbers are there for sure. But can Milwaukee be a high enough seed? That's the question. He could be the answer if voters are tired of voting for the same guy, if they don't want to give it to LeBron again, if they don't want to reward some of these super team players, maybe a guy like Giannis does the Russell Westbrook impression and is able to win it as a third, fourth seed because he puts up such crazy numbers. It's possible. At some point in his career, I'm pretty confident saying Giannis is going to win an MVP award. I don't know if it's yet. He's still super young. He's 22 years old, so he has plenty of time. But I think LeBron's probably the favorite this year. And honestly, this is probably the last year that voters have to vote for LeBron. I think that's kind of going to be interesting too. He's going to eventually start taking a step backwards and start regressing a little bit here. So I think this could be the last year that voters have a chance to really vote for LeBron. So maybe that kind of factors in a little bit too. There's that voter fatigue, but then you also want to reward his greatness before he kind of starts going the other way and taking a step back.
Yeah, very true. That's a good point too. There may be that factored in. So it's going to be an interesting MVP race to watch. This has also been an exciting rookie class, and of course, Lakers fans have a rooting interest here in the Rookie of the Year race. I've got kind of an interesting pick here for my Rookie of the Year. Who do you have?
Honestly, this is really tough for me because I think I look at Philadelphia and I think that Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons are going to really cancel each other out a little bit. Kind of like we talk about with the MVP super teams. Those guys are both going to be really important for Philadelphia, play a ton of minutes and have the ball in their hands a lot. We've already seen that Ben Simmons is probably going to be, running the point sometimes as a point forward. Markelle Fultz is going to be playing off the ball a little bit. And I'm not sure, and then they have Embiid there too, so I'm not sure either of those guys are going to put up, the monster numbers that people are predicting. Lonzo Ball, I like his game, but typically with the Rookie of the Year voting, we see voters go for guys that score the ball a lot, and Ball isn't really that guy. He's not going to be your number one scoring option. He's going to be the guy that averages the most assists and gets his teammates involved. So right now, honestly, my favorite is Dennis Smith Jr.
That's mine too.
You too? Okay, yeah. We're on the same page. I just did an article on Dennis Smith Jr. I had a chance to interview him a few days ago, and I think he's just in a perfect position to have a monster year because he's going to play a ton of minutes. He's a starter from day one. He has a lot of veterans around him. When you talk about, Dirk Nowitzki, Wes Matthews, Harrison Barnes, Nerlens Noel, Seth Curry, he has offensive weapons around him that are going to help him, score the ball, but then also help him facilitate. He's going to play a ton of minutes. And then I just think it was the perfect situation for him to slip to them at number 9 because Rick Carlisle is the perfect coach for him. You have 2 point guards on the coaching staff in Darrell Armstrong and God Shamgod, who are going to really help him take his game to the next level. Part of my article is about how God Shamgod actually started training Dennis Smith Jr. when he was in 10th grade. So Shamgod has known Dennis Smith Jr. for 5 years now, and they've worked together. And then it just so happens they reunited in Dallas. Shamgod was hired by Dallas prior to last season. So the fact that they reunited was a complete coincidence, but that's going to really help Dennis as well. So between the coaching staff they have there, the veteran players they have there, the veteran point guards that are going to be behind him, I think J.J. Barea and Devin Harris can teach him a lot. And then the fact that there are just going to be so many minutes and so many touches in the fact that he's a scorer, so he's going to put up crazy numbers that are going to really wow the voters. I think he's probably the guy. There's going to be competition, obviously, from the guys in Philly, from Lonzo, maybe Jason Tatum. I'm sure Laker fans don't want to hear that, but there's going to be competition, but I think Dennis Smith Jr. is my favorite at this point.
100% agree with everything you said there. It feels like a little bit blasphemous to say that Dennis Smith Jr. is going to win Rookie of the Year when the Lakers have Lonzo Ball. But I mean, there's a lot to like about him, and that's not saying Lonzo's going to have a bad year. I think he's going to be good, but I think because of all the factors that you mentioned, that Dennis Smith Jr. could wind up stealing the show. I've been really impressed with what I've seen from him in preseason. I think he's got a chance to put up some really big numbers. He's a guy I'm targeting in fantasy drafts, so hopefully nobody playing against me is listening. But yeah, Dennis Smith Jr. would be my pick as well.
If I said
yeah.
De'Aaron Fox, would I be kicked off the podcast for good? Is that how that works? Laker fans do not like De'Aaron Fox, do they?
Laker fans, you know what? I think Lakers fans are okay with De'Aaron Fox. I think Lakers fans don't like all the comments about Lonzo trying to duck De'Aaron Fox.
Right.
Because they didn't play each other in summer league, and then when they were supposed to play in preseason, Lonzo had sprained his ankle, which obviously he did intentionally in order to duck playing De'Aaron Fox, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Vegas one, I think that was him just taking a rest. The ankle injury was unfortunate, but I hope that becomes a really cool rivalry. I think the NBA could use more rivalries. I love the Hassan Whiteside, Joel Embiid rivalry from last night, and then it, spills over to social media. We kind of saw that with Lonzo and De'Aaron during Summer League, where De'Aaron was tweeting some stuff out. And then, just this previous time, I think it was DeMarcus Cousins was commenting on it, saying that Lonzo was ducking him. I think the more rivalries and the more petty subtweeting we have, the better. That's what the NBA is all about, right?
Well, hey, Russell Westbrook is the MVP, and I don't think it gets any more petty than him re-signing with the Oklahoma City Thunder on Kevin Durant's birthday. So if he's leading the way as the face of the NBA right now, that's just all kinds of awesome.
I love it. I cannot wait to see Fox and Ball, by the way. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. People are overreacting to one college game, so I don't think that Fox is by far the better player. I don't think he's going to destroy him. I'm looking forward to seeing them play, though, because I think both those, both sides want to have a big game, and they both have that game circled. Hopefully Lonzo is able to play in the regular season matchup. That's all I'll say.
Okay, so I wasn't planning on talking about this, but there's all kinds of drama in the NBA right now, right? I mean, we were just talking about some of it, and of course we still have. I mean, like opening night, we get the Celtics and the Cavs. That's awesome. We get LeBron against Kyrie and all that stuff going on, right? But the NBA All-Star Game has changed, right? They've changed the way that they pick teams. Now there's going to be team captains, and they're going to be selecting teams. And I've heard from a few NBA players that aren't too pleased with this. They think it's going to be manufacturing more drama, that, if a guy gets picked last, then he's going to be pissed off that somebody didn't pick him, and there's going to be creating all this tension between the players. I don't know how you feel about it. I love it. I hope they televise this thing, and I hope that they show each of the team captains making all of their picks, because I want to see, if LeBron is the captain, will he pick Kyrie on his team, or will he just refuse to, or what happens if, say Miles Turner makes the team and then he ends up being the last pick or something, and then does he just go out and have an angry all-star game just to show everybody up? I think it's great. What do you think?
Yeah, I really hope it's televised. I'm not sure if it will be, because whenever the NBA announced it, they had it was a joint statement from the NBA and the union. And I feel like the NBA would want this televised because the ratings would be amazing. If you're an NBA fan, who wouldn't be tuned in for that hour or whatever it is to watch this draft? But if you're the union, I could see where they would say, okay, this is going to be awkward for certain players. And I could see the union not wanting it televised. Chris Paul is the president of the union. LeBron James is the vice president. Both of those guys are free agents next summer. So they have to kind of be wondering, do I really want that out there? And be on that national stage. And really, I'm kind of curious to see how they do it too, because, I know how it's going to work, where you have the top Eastern Conference vote getter and the Western Conference vote getter choosing their teams. But there's also been some talk that basically the top player would choose their first teammate, and then they would kind of hand the baton over, and then that second player would choose the next player. So that's a possibility as well. So we may not get, let's say LeBron is the number one vote getter for the Eastern Conference. We may not get LeBron voting for, picking his entire team. We may have him make one pick, and then each guy gets to choose the next selection. So I'm curious how they do it, but I do hope it's televised. I think it would be fascinating television. Not only would you have, the You know, the issues of guys that used to play together may not get along. Not only would you have that factored in, and the guys that get picked last that want to now, go out and have a big All-Star game. I think it's also going to be a way for people to kind of read the tea leaves. People are going to really speculate. Let's say LeBron does do the entire draft and he assembles his own team. People are going to say, oh, does he want to play with that guy? Does he want to go join up with them in free agency? It leads to so many different storylines like that. So I think it's really interesting. I think All-Star Weekend's always so interesting anyway because a lot of fans, maybe now in recent years fans have realized this, but so much recruiting takes place during All-Star Weekend behind the scenes. Guys are going out together to dinner, guys are going to parties. There's all these different events. They like playing together for the first time in some cases. So, I think that you already have so much recruiting during All-Star Weekend. If you add the draft element and you televise it, that's only going to, make things even bigger. And it's going to lead to more speculation. So I'm with you. I hope it's televised. I don't know if it will be. I'm hoping that the NBA offers some clarity on that pretty soon here because I know that question's been asked a lot. But we shall see. And then hopefully we do get some awkward picks where, Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant have to be on the same team, or Kevin Durant passes on Russell Westbrook, or the LeBron Kyrie thing. There's so many different ways this could go that would be interesting. So I'm very curious to see what happens. And I think also one thing that does become very interesting is I think you're really going to get an idea of how players respect each other.
Yeah.
I think it's always interesting to me when I talk to NBA players and how they perceive their peers versus how fans perceive them. You talk about a guy like Damian Lillard, for example, who hasn't even been voted as an All-Star in recent years. But last year, when you looked at the player vote, I want to say among the guards, he had the third most votes of all Western Conference guards. Like, players that go against him say this guy is definitely an All-Star. So I think that there's going to be some surprises in a draft as well, where you may think, oh, this guy's going to go a little bit later, but players know who can score the ball, who can thrive in that kind of setting as a one-on-one scorer, and it's going to be really interesting to see how players view each other as well.
Absolutely. I mean, with the NBA, even at the risk of creating more drama, in my mind, the NBA has become a little bit too friendly anyway. Like, let's keep some of these rivalries going. I love it. I love seeing all these guys going back and forth at each other. Well, Alex, let's wrap things up here. Let's finish off with this. Let's predict the Western Conference and Eastern Conference finalists, so two teams who are going to make it to the finals from each, and then who ultimately becomes the NBA champion, Golden State Warriors, but who ends up becoming the NBA champion. What do you think?
My NBA finals are the Phoenix Suns and the Chicago Bulls. No, I'm just kidding.
We should put a bet down on that then right now.
No, I mean, I think it's going to be Warriors Cavs again. I hate to just do that again and not have a more exciting pick, but the Warriors, I just don't see a way that they lose in the playoffs before the NBA Finals. And honestly, even in the NBA Finals, I have Golden State winning it all. Not only do you have this entire core coming back because they re-signed Curry, Durant, Iguodala, Livingston. You went out and added Nick Young and Omri Caspi. They're going to have more experience under their belt. I don't think people realize how hard it is to add a focal point like Kevin Durant to a team and then do that well in year one. Usually it takes a long time for a team to adjust. We saw in Miami, they lost that first year when they had LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. But, last year, Kevin Durant was learning how to play in Steve Kerr's system on the fly. He was trying not to step on Steph Curry's toes and vice versa. These guys were kind of figuring out how to coexist. Now, they have a year of experience together. They're going to be more confident. I think they have actually less pressure. I think last year the pressure was really on to go win the championship after losing to Cleveland. Durant had more pressure on him because if things went badly, everyone was going to point the finger at him and blame him and say, you ruined this. This team was already so good. You screwed it up. So now that they won a championship, they're just looking to add to their trophy case. So I think there's less pressure, more chemistry. I think these guys every year are going to get better playing in Steve Kerr's system just because, they're going to be more comfortable, especially the guys like Durant that are newer. And then the fact that you have, guys like Nick Young and Caspi and Jordan Bell, they got better. And that's crazy to say, but I think they're going to be a much better team. And then I have Cleveland coming out of the Eastern Conference still. I like this Boston team a lot, but I think that they're a team that's going to be at their best 2-3 years from now. I think what they're trying to do is keep their window open so that they're kind of on the way up whenever Golden State is on the way down. Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving were amazing pickups, but they still rely on a lot of young talent over there. And it's just really hard to bet against LeBron James in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I think in a 7-game series, LeBron's going to take over. I think by then Isaiah Thomas will be healthy, and I think he's going to have a huge impact in the playoffs for Cleveland, and he's going to be trying to play for a big contract, so I think he's going to do really well. And again, I like the move they made with Jay Crowder at power forward and Kevin Love at center. And then the Dwayne Wade pickup was really good too. So I have Cleveland Golden State again, and I have Golden State winning. I'll say 6 games. I think maybe it goes a little bit further than last year. I hope it does because that makes things more entertaining. But yeah, those are my picks right now. I could see Boston potentially coming out of the East, but I can't see anyone other than the Warriors coming out of the Western Conference. As much as I like Houston and as interesting as Oklahoma City is going to be, Golden State is just too good.
Yeah, I think that Houston probably ends up in the Western Conference Finals with the Warriors, but ultimately, even though I like the way Houston's constructed and everything, I don't think that they can really push the Warriors. And then coming out of the East, I could see Boston, especially if Kyrie really picks it up. I mean, he's showed some pretty impressive things so far in preseason, so if he really gets going, Boston could give the Cavs a run for their money, especially if Cleveland's starting to slow down a bit. But you know what? I still think at the end of the day, you're right, you can't pick against LeBron, so if we do see Warriors and Cavs yet again in the finals, it does probably end up going Warriors once again, and then of course we enter the summer of LeBron, and we'll see what happens from there. Well, Alex, I think we've covered a ton here. I want to thank you for coming on and giving us your time. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to watch this Lakers team this year. I think there's a lot of interesting storylines and interesting players. So I'll be keeping my eye on them. And thanks for having me. Anytime.
Before we get out of here, did you have anything that you have coming up that you wanted to mention?
We have the Hoop Site podcast. Make sure you go follow that. We have a lot of players come on and break things down and kind of discuss things on and off the court. I actually have a Brandon Ingram interview coming up. I'll be interviewing him here in the next few weeks, talking about his offseason. He put in a ton of work during the offseason, and he's expecting a big year. So I'll be talking to Brandon Ingram, and that's going to run on Hoop Site. And then we actually recently, USA Today Sports Media Group launched a number of different websites, NBA Wire websites. So far, we have WarriorsWire.com, RocketsWire.com, CelticsWire.com, ThunderWire.com, and then actually we have 2 player-centric sites, LeBron Wire, and then Laker fans will like this, we have LonzoWire.com. And what that is basically a website that is focused on covering Lonzo Ball on and off the court. So we have highlights from his games. We also have, breakdowns of how he plays. We have Josh Martin, who is an LA writer, is running the website, and he does some stat deep dives. He looks at Lonzo's jump shot, analyzes that, breaks down each one of Lonzo's games. So if you're a big Lonzo Ball fan, go check it out. We also cover everything the family has going on, whether it's LeVar, LaMelo, LiAngelo. There's so much stuff every single day. It seems like there's something new with this family. So if you're curious about Lonzo and his family, be sure to check out LonzoWire.com. They're going to be covering everything on and off the court Lonzo-wise throughout the season. And Josh is doing a great job. I know you guys, Lakers Nation do a fantastic job covering the team better than anyone. But if you want just Lonzo-specific stuff, make sure after you go check out Lakers Nation, jump over to Lonzo Ball or LonzoWire.com and get all the Lonzo Ball news you can handle.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, Alex. We'll definitely make sure to do that. Once again, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to check in with you again a little bit later on in this season and see how our predictions are looking.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, man. Take care.
Hey, you too. All right. So that was Alex Kennedy of Hoops Hype. Follow him on Twitter at Alex Kennedy NBA. That's going to about wrap things up for us today. Make sure you head over to iTunes and rate, review, and subscribe to this show. If you leave a question in the review section, then I will answer it on air here. Good way to get on the air. Leave your Twitter handle too, and we'll give you a shout out. As always, you can find this show on Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, the CLNS Media app, and of course, LakersNation.com, your one-stop shop for all things Lakers. My name's Trevor Lane. Follow me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. This has been the Lakers Nation podcast. See ya.